this band?
We do this
I know. And
with
guys
some
do it well.
regularity.
You do it well.
Thank you, John. Well, welcome, John Oates. So good to have you here. And we have both spent a lot of time in Colorado, even though it's not our native state, but we've both spent a lot of time here, and we haven't really spent much time together
No, I
somehow.
know. We've been threatening.
We've been talking about it. I just think as I mentioned in your introduction, I just thought your story is so cool, and so you do such a good job of sort of vividly capturing all these little pieces and parts, and I can't help but want to start with your folks, your parents, your dad's parents, your grandparents, your grandfather. Was he from Wales originally?
He was an English policeman stationed on the Rock of Gibraltar.
Oh wow!
Yes.
Where he fell in love.
Where he fell in love with a Moorish woman who lived in a cave, believe it or not. I know.
See what I'm saying? I'm not making this stuff up.
Well, it was a cave, but it was a house in a cave.
Yeah.
Okay, let's kind of clarify.
And
that.
then your mother's pure Italian.
All Italian. That's correct.
And first generation, she came over with her and big Italian family in the Lower East Side of New York.
Yep.
And that was sort of like your entree into performing was just entertaining these
Italians.
Italians,
Yes.
Singing in Italian, right?
Yes, I won my first. I made my professional debut in Wildwood at the Wildwood Crest Pier in New Jersey. Oh, singing Volare in Italian. My grandmother told me I would win, and she was right. $20, and that's how it started.
Wow. So you got the just the emotional reward and the cash. That sort of set you on this path.
And the first meatball.
And the first meatball.
Yes, always the first meatball.
Amazing.
That's right.
Amazing. So and then your family moved to Pennsylvania. You left New York. Yep. Was there music in your house then when you got there? Or was it just whatever was on the radio?
Well, my folks liked music. They liked to dance. They liked big band music. That was my first. Big band music. I grew up with big band music, and okay, we've got New Jersey and big band.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what more can you want? Okay. But no, they were very encouraging, and I sang at a very early age, and they, of course, I started taking guitar lessons at 6, and they provided me with instruments. They were very supportive, so that's been the best part, yeah.
And then, we talk about the Philly sound, the Philadelphia sound, and is that something that you could describe from listening on the radio as you're growing up and as you're getting into high school? How would you describe the Philly sound?
Well, I think in broad terms, Philadelphia is very well known for its urban R&B through the great songs and recordings of Gamble and Huff. Right. But Philadelphia has an amazing folk tradition too, and I think it's very a unique city. I mean, if you think about it, and I don't want to get too deep in this, but from a kind of geographic and historic perspective, Philadelphia was the first northern cities north of the Mason-Dixon line. So after the Civil War, a lot of rural African Americans came north, and one of the first places they settled was Philadelphia. So you have this very unique Anglo-English classical tradition mixing with this more rural African-American folk tradition. And I think it's what makes Philadelphia so damn soulful.
Yeah. I love the fact that as a kid you were into doo-wop and you were into the early rock and roll, you were singing, Elvis songs, but you were also, you discovered Doc Watson, and you discovered, Mississippi John Hurt, and there was was it called the Second Fret, a local?
The Second Fret, the Main Point, and the
Bryn
Philadelphia
Mawr,
Folk Festival.
And the Philly Folk Festival, yeah. I've participated in those places.
Going on over 50 years now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And then, on the radio, I heard that the Philly radio stations didn't really get moved by the British invasion thing. The whole Beatles and Rolling Stones thing didn't really catch on there.
It's true. You couldn't dance to it. In Philadelphia, if you can't dance to music, they weren't interested. So, yeah, the early Beatles stuff sounded weird to me. It sounded like, it sounded like a bunch of guys, kind of like my friends playing in the garage. Little did I know what was really they were going to evolve into.
Right.
And I was obviously not getting it at first because I was wearing sharkskin suits and trying to play songs with string arrangements and things like that. So
wow, so wild. And then, you did your obligatory ramble through Europe in the early 70s, and you came back and then dove into this partnership with Daryl Hall. I want to ask you about, I think it was sort of like your first excursion together into New York to do a demo or something like that.
Right.
What was that about?
Well, it was actually Daryl's. I had a group called the Masters. We made a record in 1967. Daryl had a group called the Temptones. He made a record in 1967. So we were aware of each other, and then three of the guys in my band got drafted into Vietnam, so that band basically fell apart. I met Daryl, and he asked me if I would be the guitar player for his backing his vocal group. And one of the first things that he had going was a showcase at the Gaslight in the Village in New York. So we got together, we went to New York, played the Gaslight, and then Daryl kind of sprung a little surprise on me. He said, "Oh, and by the way, after we finish doing this, we're going uptown to the Apollo Theater to see the Temptations." And I was like, so this Daryl Hall guy was impressing me right out of the box.
That's cool.
But what he didn't tell me was that we were going through the backstage door into the backstage because Daryl's group was called the Temptones, and they were actually discovered by the Temptations. So we hung around backstage with them and then went into the front row and watched the show at the Apollo Theater.
Wow.
It was a pretty amazing experience.
Wow. So, like I said, folks, I'm not making any of this up. It's a ridiculous story, and it carries all through the trials and tribulations and the false starts and the songwriting and the nefarious hangers-on and agents and managers. But the bottom line is a really amazing journey and a lot of highlights. And along the way, you always had this fascination for cars, and you got into being a race car driver a little bit and bought some fancy cars when you made some dough.
Yep.
Fancy red Porsche and other things. And
Boy, Nick, you really read this book. Wow.
I'm not the only one, I don't think.
Thank you. I appreciate
But
it.
no, it's a cool story because so many people were inspired by music. So many people had a moment where they found that inspiration, and it wasn't all 4 years old when we're winning $20 in front of our Italian families, but it was
Right.
we all found ways to participate and try to connect through music. I think everybody did. And what's so interesting about your story is that you kept on trying, kept on looking, kept on finding new ways, modulating through the MTV era and
Surviving the MTV era.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, that brings us back to kind of full circle. Now you're spending more time in Nashville. This new record of yours, Arkansas, is really kind of reconnecting with those Mississippi John Hurt songs that you really laboriously studied and learned and figured out how to play like those guys. Hours and hours of practicing, right?
Well, it was what I did before I met Daryl Hall. When I was playing guitar, as I said, I started at 6. And I was very fortunate in the mid-'60s to meet an incredible guy named Jerry Ricks in Philadelphia, who became my guitar teacher and mentor and introduced me to a lot, and actually firsthand to a lot of the early folk and roots performers who, and actually there was, across the street from where Jerry lived, there was a guy named Dick Waterman, who managed a lot of these early performers. And they would come to Philadelphia, they would sleep on the couch, I would get to meet them, go see them at the Second Fret or whatever. And so it became a real, it was just an amazing time to be in Philadelphia. And that was what I did before I met Daryl and we started on our partnership. So.
Yeah. And so now this record, you cut it in Nashville, you've got some familiar faces on there. Yeah. And it's a way to revisit both that early phase of your musical career and also try some new stuff, right?
Yeah. Well, I got to collaborate with Mississippi John Hurt. He doesn't know that, but I took one of his songs and kind of massaged it a bit and added a refrain. And it was a chance to really stay true to the authenticity of the original music, but put a little of myself in it and to take it somewhere as well. And it was a fine line that I felt like I had to walk on this album too, because I really didn't want to desecrate kind of the originality and the essence of what that music is all about, because it means so much to me. But at the same time, I wanted to play it with a band and have the guys be able to stretch out and kind of take it to another place.
Yeah, there's also a funny story that I think is worth noting, which is that your early recording session with Hall & Oates involved a guitar
Right.
that used to belong to Mississippi John Hurt, right?
When Mississippi John Hurt passed away, his guitar was given to my guitar teacher, Jerry Ricks. And it was 1972. Daryl and I had just gotten our Atlantic record contract, and we were ready to start recording. And I asked Jerry to play with me on the record. I really wanted him on the record. And he said, should I bring John Hurt's guitar with me to the studio? So needless to say, I said yes, and so he brought it. So on the whole Oates album and the Abandoned Luncheonette album, which was our first two records, I'm playing Mississippi John Hurt's guitar on those two records. So now flash forward to 2016, and the guitar, Jerry went to Denver, spent some time in Denver, and I believe he was getting ready to go to Europe, and I think he needed some money. And I believe he sold the guitar to Harry Tufts, who might actually be here tonight. And the guitar ended up in the hands of another guitar collector named David Ferretta. And to make a long story short, I bought the guitar. So it's back in my hands now.
Yeah, it's cool.
And I'm very, very happy. It's really been a blessing and really an amazing experience to have that guitar again.
It's interesting because, you know, a lot of the time we get to know, you know, successful. We think of pop musicians or rock stars as, you know, we know that they have a connection to roots music, or they know that they've spent time, certainly the Rolling Stones did and the Beatles too, but it's just cool to understand the depth of your fascination and your appreciation for the particular style of country blues and fingerstyle that these guys, you know, popularized and invented, really. Anyway, we could go on. I think the idea is that there's lots more to be discovered both on your new record and in your book.
Oh, thank you.
And meanwhile, let's get back to some more music.
Shall we do one more?
At least.
At least.
At
All
least.
right.
Welcome back, if you would, John Oates.